growing controversy tonight following the fire union's endorsement of Mayor Brandon Scott. The scathing criticism the union has for Sheila Dixon that some say went too far, and how Dixon is responding.
This is nothing new.
Plus, more victims of crime are taking the law into their own hands, saying police aren't showing up.
Is that the type of environment Baltimore City voters can expect to see if elected again?
Maryland's interim superintendent speaks about the future of the state's education.
It's all focused on how do we improve outcomes for children.
She sits down with FOX45 News Project Baltimore on her goals to help your kids succeed. A shooting in a hospital parking lot leaves one person hurt.
It's sad. People don't value life.
What sparked gunfire as the community sounds off on the violence. Then proposed changes to the state's taxes could take a bite out of your wallet. The everyday services that could end up costing you more.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Mary Bubala.
And I'm Kai Jackson. Mayoral candidate Sheila Dixon responds to a controversial endorsement today. The fire union throws its support behind Brandon Scott.
I've always felt strongly that fire department, police departments, that those were, and some of the city unions, that they really should stay out of the endorsement process, because who's ever there, who's ever in the leadership wants, have to work with everybody.
Well, the union's support of Mayor Scott is an about-face for the group. It has been very critical of the Scott administration surrounding funding, call volumes, and staffing shortages in recent years. Frustration on display in 2022 when first responders could be heard complaining over the fire department's radio communications.
For the third time, we told you we are out of service per EMS2 for relief. I'm completely prepared to tell my driver to disembark, and I will drive this thing into your heart.
Now, last year, union leaders blamed staffing shortages when only a fire truck showed up after a father called 911 while his son was having a seizure. Officials say no ambulances were available.
We only have 28 units to respond to emergencies in Baltimore City on any given day. And sometimes that's even less with staffing crisis that we have.
Our city not just failed my son, they failed us as taxpayers, us as parents.
And less than 2 weeks ago, the union took issue with Mayor Scott's allotment of pandemic relief money, saying the department hasn't received any ARPA dollars despite submitting a request. Fox 45 News pressed union leaders about that.
About a week and a half ago, you told my colleague you were frustrated that the fire department still hadn't gotten any money from ARPA to help with improvements. How do you square the difference between hearing those frustrations a week and a half ago and now standing with the mayor to endorse him?
It was a communication breakdown. I feel like I didn't realize that those funds were being worked on at the time. And now that I know that, that's why we have those funds available. And the mayor's working hard to give us a lot of those ARPA money. So it's definitely going to help us out.
Well, Sheila Dixon is calling the endorsement a political move from the mayor.
It's very clear the city council thought about the fire department when they transferred the money. Now we're 2 months away from an election and everything. And so the mayor's finally working for his agencies and the citizens of Baltimore. So the voters have to make decisions and choices. And it's very clear that he's fighting to keep his job.
Well, Dixon also responded to an email to Baltimore County firefighters, encouraging them to attend today's endorsement announcement. Now, in that email sent on Friday, the county fire union referred to Dixon as, quote, a mutt of a past mayor. Fox 45's Keith Daniels obtained that internal email. He joins us live now with the fallout. Keith?
Well, Kai, it's a situation for some observers that takes a closer look at the saying, words matter. And tonight, it's one word in an email. Baltimore City firefighters endorsing Mayor Brandon Scott. Union leaders not shy about lodging criticism at Scott's rival, Sheila Dixon.
One candidate on the ballot was mayor previously for almost a full term before resigning due to a criminal conviction for perjury and embezzlement.
Joshua Fannin, president of the city's Fire Officers Union, digging deep. In fact, before the announcement Monday, there was an email Friday. an email sent by Fannin to Baltimore County's Fire Union President John Sabega, who shared it with his members. An email obtained by FOX45 News. Fannin inviting members of the Baltimore County Firefighters Union to Monday's event. It reads in part, the Baltimore locals are engaged in an epic struggle this election year 2024 between a fire department friendly incumbent and a mutt of a past mayor. Dixon referred to as a mutt. The word triggering reaction from some county fire members, including one member, a veteran who wants to remain anonymous, but speaking out.
As a black woman, I was floored that my local union sent out something so offensive. I guess as a woman, it kind of puts me in the terms of thinking of, first of all, a mutt tends to be an undesirable dog. And then on top of that, it reminded me of B-word. Like, it's a derogatory term that just, like, it's just offensive in general to call a black woman a undesirable in a sense.
We reached out to Sabega and Fannin. Sabega saying he only shared the email, didn't write it. Fannin says he meant no harm, only used the word commonly used in the fire service.
Which is a mutt is someone or thing that will abuse and mistreat a firefighter. And that would be the only consideration that I would have in using it in any day speech, and in particular in that email.
Still, Dixon,
we need to be working together no matter if someone supports you or not,
takes issue with that term being used to describe her.
Again, to me, it's more derogatory, and I just believe in taking the high road. Oh, clearly, I would have used a different term. I mean, I would have focused on your candidate that you support and why you support him, and left it at that.
Well, I asked Fannin, since knowing now that the word can have a different meaning among some firefighters, would he use a different word? Or rather, would he use a different word? He said no. He said he would continue to use that word because, by definition, he said, the word can be used. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. Well, Baltimore police have also voiced concerns over staffing levels as the police union claims BPD is about 700 officers short. Many residents say they're taking matters into their own hands since they can't trust police response times.
The problem, I think, because the police, they don't show up anymore. Like, they don't came like before. It's sad.
Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost pressing Mayor Scott on an uptick in quality of life crime.
We obtained a memo sent from the police union to its members outlining serious concerns about salary negotiations and staffing within BPD. That paired with the property crimes that continue to plague communities across the city. We asked Mayor Brandon Scott if this is what voters should expect to see if he's reelected later this year. Hardly a week goes by without hearing something like this
we just received an armed person call
over the police scanner.
A carjacking last night, that was scary.
This time, it was the victim who tried to fire back.
They were attempting to rob or carjack the victim. The victim withdrew his legal firearm and discharged once at them.
Before thieves drove off in their car, this neighbor,
we were in the living room and we just heard a pop.
Says these crimes in her Pigtown neighborhood have become all too common.
I don't want to be a victim, so I know that we've discussed, doing a conceal and license to carry and things of that nature, and definitely taking the proper and appropriate steps to carry a gun.
But it's not just this incident where neighbors are taking matters into their own hands. Check out this doorbell video capturing young criminals breaking a window and diving into a Kia, only stopped when another neighbor turns around after seeing the crime unfold. Then the suspects taking off down the street.
Statistically, it's going to happen.
The surge in quality of life crimes happening as Baltimore police remain significantly understaffed. Fox 45 News obtaining this new memo dated March 11th from Baltimore Police Union's president, Mike Mancuso. Ahead of contract talks, Mancuso writes to members,
Talk is cheap, and BPD is at a breaking point. You are severely overworked and underpaid. Will you continue to run yourselves into the ground for a mayor that clearly does not respect you? Mancuso says the department is 700 officers short and losing more by the week, adding there are about 575 fully duty officers working in Baltimore, in a city dominated by demands for crime solutions. Fox 45 News compiling a list of vacancies within police departments across the state. Howard County, 2.4%, less than 1% in Harford County Sheriff's Office. Baltimore County, 13.2% vacancy rate, but Baltimore City, 22.5%. With more and more people either afraid of property crimes in Baltimore or taking matters into their own hands to prevent crime.
Thank you, and good morning.
Monday, we questioned Mayor Brandon Scott about the future.
Is that the type of environment Baltimore City voters can expect to see if elected again?
No, the type of environment Baltimore City voters can expect to see is having the largest homicide reduction the city's ever seen, seeing public safety go in the right direction.
The mayor chalking up recruiting struggles to a nationwide trend and instead doubling down on declining violent crime numbers.
But what we're going to focus on is continuing having, as we're talking right now, a 17% reduction in violent crime on top of a historic reduction last year.
So what do you say to the people who are continuing to deal with these property crimes? Is that not a priority for you?
No, it's very much a priority, and I think you and I talked about this recently. When you look at the numbers of arrests that the police department, our fine women and men in the police department have made for things like auto theft, for things like carjacking, for things like larceny, we can see that the arrests are happening. But as you very well know, what's happening is the same people are being let out.
Mayor Scott shirking responsibility and instead placing blame at the feet of lawmakers in Annapolis. But the reality on the ground in Baltimore, between February 25th through March 2nd, a 7-day span, 54 robberies were reported to police, 48 burglaries, 130 cars stolen, and so far this year in the city, 1,377 cars have been stolen. Some recent polling indicates Baltimore City voters remain concerned about public safety. Mayor Brandon Scott continues to lag behind his biggest challenger, Sheila Dixon. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
And that brings us to our question of the day. Whose crime strategy do you feel is best for Baltimore City? Mayor Brandon Scott or Sheila Dixon? So far, 58% of people who voted say Mayor Scott. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in.
Police staffing shortages aren't just an issue in Baltimore. Seattle, Washington has its smallest police force since 1991, despite multi-million-dollar efforts to recruit and retain officers. The department has lost hundreds of officers since 2020, when the Seattle City Council voted to defund the police there.
They are stretched too thin. God forbid if there's ever a major event, multiple shooter event.
It's a tough call to get people to buy back into a company, if you will, that has major PR issues.
Officials in Portland, Oregon are raising similar concerns. According to police data, nearly 1 in every 3 shifts are understaffed, leaving serious concerns about police response time.
I just had a car break in on Sunday.
Did you call police?
Yeah, they're not coming.
It's my job to find the cops when we need the cops and send them to where they need to be. And far too often, there are no cops to be sent.
The Portland City Council also proposing hiring an outside firm to evaluate staffing issues within the police department.
Residents in West Baltimore are on edge after a shooting in a hospital parking lot. What led up to the gunfire and why one resident says this paints a picture of the crime problem in that neighborhood. That's coming up at 10:30.
All right, good evening, everyone. So far, it has not gotten too cold outside. 47 degrees right now. Boy, did we have the wind up most of the day, and we also had some chilly temperatures around. The wind has died down a lot. We have hardly seen any just in the last couple of hours. Just a light wind out of the west-southwest around 5 to 10 miles per hour. We're not seeing things being blown around for a change. We'll likely see temperatures coming down to the 40s later on tonight, low 40s, but not too bad. We're going to be seeing a big warm-up coming. Going to track that for you coming up later.
All right, Gerard, thank you. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock tonight, new polling shows Americans are feeling better about the economy, but not everyone agrees that the Biden administration is behind it, why some Americans say who they trust to keep the country on track. One Maryland high school principal is telling students to stop wearing name brand clothing, how logos are turning into targets in Prince George's County. And coming up after the break, interim state superintendent sits down with Project Baltimore, what she says needs to change to make sure your students are getting the best education possible.
In her first sit-down interview since taking over as the interim state school superintendent, Dr. Carrie Wright speaks candidly about the future of Maryland schools.
Project Baltimore's Chris Papps explains Dr. Wright shares what she's learned on her first 6 months on the job, what she believes needs to change, and how she plans to do it.
This is your first sit-down interview since you became interim superintendent?
That is correct.
How's it going?
Great. It's great. It's a lot of work to be done.
After nearly 6 months as Maryland's interim superintendent of schools, Dr. Carrie Wright knows she has a lot to do, and the expectations are very high.
It's all focused on how do we improve outcomes for children and how do we support teachers and leaders in that process.
And we also are going to make this.
Maryland is adding billions of additional dollars to public education, and it's her job to make sure taxpayers get a return on that investment. But it's something that she has done before with a lot less money and much farther to climb. Before coming to Maryland, Dr. Wright served as the state superintendent in Mississippi, a school system that was ranked one of the lowest performing in the country when she took over.
In fact, the old saying in the South used to be, thank God for Mississippi, because the other states in the area knew that when the test results came out, they didn't have to worry about being at the bottom because we always were.
But in 2013, Mississippi overhauled its education system, focusing primarily on improving early childhood literacy and training teachers how to teach reading.
We hired literacy coaches and put them in our lowest performing schools. We tracked and monitored progress 3 times a year to make sure we were on track. We provided additional help to those schools that needed it the most.
The plan paid off. Quality Counts is Education Week's annual report card, which grades states based on their performance in K-12 education. Under Dr. Wright's leadership, Mississippi's grade improved from an F to a C, boosting its ranking from 50th to 35th in the country. According to federal testing known as NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, Mississippi now outperforms Maryland in many key metrics, which raises the question, could the same solutions work here?
I don't know that I would say that what we're doing wrong as much as what we may need to change, and I think that to me is reading instruction.
According to Dr. Wright, Maryland, just like Mississippi, must focus on getting children to read by 3rd grade. And it begins not with students, but with teachers, training them in the science of reading.
To me, there is a very methodical way that you go about teaching children to read.
Professional development for teachers is a big part of the blueprint for Maryland's future, which pumps billions of additional tax dollars into public education. But funding the blueprint is crushing local budgets. Several counties say they can't afford to fund it, and they're calling on lawmakers to delay implementing it.
I think that we need to continue to fully implement the blueprint.
Dr. Wright says delaying the blueprint is not the answer. Schools need to restructure.
So you're not going to get extra funds to keep doing what you've already been doing. You have to look at your funds and say, and your staff and your teachers, and say, where are these children, and then how does that money end up where those children are?
But does more money make the difference? The most recent census data from 2022 says Mississippi spends just over $10,000 per student, while Maryland spends more than $16,000 per student. When Dr. Wright overhauled education in Mississippi, she had a lot less money to work with. But there's also something else she didn't have. The Mississippi Association of Educators, similar to a teachers union, does not have collective bargaining rights, making it much less powerful than Maryland's teachers unions. According to the most recent federal filings, the Mississippi Association reported $2.1 million in revenue in 2021. Maryland's teachers union collected nearly $26.5 million.
One of the main concerns we hear from school administrators is that it is very difficult to fire, get rid of a bad teacher because of the union influence.
I think you've got to go through the steps of trying to help someone. The same thing would be true for a principal that may not be as strong as that principal needs to be. And I think everybody deserves that first. I think everybody deserves the opportunity to see, can we build your skill sets?
Once teachers have been given the training and resources they need, if the results still are not there, Dr. Wright says there are options, such as career counseling, to put teachers in other positions outside of the classroom.
A teacher has more than a job. You've got a mission as a teacher. These are children's lives that depend on what you're doing with them each and every day. But the bottom line for me is we should not have anybody in any kind of leadership position, leading in a classroom, leading in a building, leading in a district, that's not putting students first.
I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
And Dr. Wright took over in October as the interim superintendent, replacing Mohammed Chowdhury. She tells Project Baltimore she has applied for the full-time position. The Maryland State Board of Education is conducting a national search for candidates and is expected to announce their choice in late April.
I guess you could say I intended House Bill 1515 to be a bit of a conversation starter.
A new proposal would lower Maryland's sales tax but expand where you can be charged. Why lawmakers on both sides of the aisle say the bill may not move forward.
Okay, we've got some more weather coming for you. At least this time, it might actually be weather you like. Yeah, we've got some real springtime temperatures coming your way. A pretty big warm up on the way. It's going to be more of a roller coaster. Lots of ups and downs here. Rain chances by the weekend. And the better question is spring canceled? Well, it's only a week away. We're going to find out what it is going to be like.
You can watch Fox 45 News free anytime on Amazon Fire TV or Samsung TV Plus.
Taking a look now at the Fox box. Top left, one of the top sources for Republicans in their impeachment inquiry into President Biden has been indicted for allegedly passing false information about the president. GOP lawmakers claim his testimony is not crucial to the case.
Former President Trump is reversing his stance on a possible TikTok ban. He says the U.S. needs to make sure users' privacy is protected, but he doesn't think TikTok poses a threat any different from other social media platforms like Facebook and X. Critics say Trump is only changing his stance because a TikTok investor donated to his campaign.
Bottom left, the Justice Department is launching a criminal investigation into Boeing's handling of the Alaska Airlines door fiasco earlier this year. There were no serious injuries, but Boeing admits records for installation and removal of the door panel were never created, even though they're required.
Bottom right, Alabama Senator Katie Britt is under fire for her comments during the GOP's response to the State of the Union address. Britt mentioned the story of Carla Jacinto, a woman who was the victim of sex trafficking at 12 years old. Britt blames the Biden administration for allowing this to happen, but Jacinto says the incident happened several years ago when President George W. Bush was president.
I work as a spokesperson for many victims who have no voice, and I really would like them to be empathetic. And I think she should first take into account what really happens before telling a story of that magnitude.
Jacinto also says the incident happened in Mexico, not in the United States, as Britt implied. Britt's office tells the Washington Post there was nothing misleading during her speech.
What's going on in the city now, it's something that's sad to say it might happen even more often.
A shooting in the parking lot of a Baltimore hospital. An update on the investigation as residents talk about safety.
Popular clothing brands are becoming a popular target for criminals in Prince George's County. Why police are telling teens to watch what they wear. We are following three big stories at 10:30. Teens in Maryland are becoming targets because of their fashion choices. Why school leaders in Prince George's County say students need to be careful about what they wear to school.
You could be paying more for everyday services like haircuts, dry cleaning, and more to offset a state budget shortfall. We'll hear from taxpayer advocates who are pushing back.
And a fight leads to a shooting in the MedStar Harbor Hospital parking lot this afternoon. And we begin there. The violence on a medical campus leaving nearby residents on edge.
Fox 45's Jeff Abel joins us live with an update on that investigation. Jeff?
Well, a 32-year-old man is being treated tonight after he was shot just steps from the hospital's front door. It had proven to be a peaceful day at Harbor Hospital until gunfire turned this hospital into a crime scene.
That happened at a hospital but you have a police station that's right across the street, so it goes to show and tell you how things are going.
It was the middle of the afternoon when police say a 32-year-old drove himself to the hospital. He'd been in a fight not too far away in Cherry Hill, and according to police, the suspect was trailing him. And when the victim parked here in the hospital's parking lot, police say the suspect took aim, shooting the 32-year-old victim before he could even get out of his vehicle.
When you got people like that, I say they don't care.
It's sad. People don't value life. You know what I mean? We value things more than we value people.
The victim was shot in the chest. Police say they have several persons of interest in custody, but so far haven't announced an arrest.
What's going on in the city now, it's something that's sad to say it might happen even more often.
For those who regularly come to this hospital to enjoy the peaceful waters around it, this day delivered an emergency like they'd never seen before.
It's a problem that we didn't start it, but we can change it.
As for the victim, he remains in critical or stable condition tonight. We're live. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Jeff, thank you. Baltimore police say a 42-year-old was shot and killed this evening on Pulaski Highway in East Baltimore. Investigators say that man was shot in the head and pronounced dead in a nearby hospital. Anyone with information is asked to call Baltimore homicide detectives at the number you see here on your screen.
BPD is asking for your help identifying this suspect in 2 recent sexual assaults in the area of Gwynns Falls Parkway and Dukeland Street. One of the victims was reportedly a juvenile who was robbed at gunpoint and sexually assaulted on Friday morning. The suspect was wearing a mask at the time of the assaults, but the picture on the right is a projection of what he might actually look like. Anybody with information is asked to call Metro Crime Stoppers.
Baltimore Police Commissioner Richard Worley says he's planning to roll out new traffic enforcement. Worley is instructing police to pull more people over for speeding, reckless driving, and running red lights, something law enforcement expert Jason Johnson calls a worthwhile plan.
Traffic stops routinely uncover more serious crimes that are in progress just by coming into contact with people whom police officers have a lawful reason to stop. They can identify more serious violations of the law.
Worley says he wants to crack down on deadly crashes and cases of road rage. 3 weeks ago, Tanisha Pollock was arrested and charged with attempted murder after investigators say she opened fire on another driver and then an off-duty officer here in the city. A couple of months before that, 40-year-old Nisha Jackson was arrested for a shooting that investigators say started with an argument behind the wheel. A city police spokesperson says the plan will be rolled out in the coming weeks.
Well, we are learning more about a shooting in Baltimore County this afternoon. Police say they were called to Saturn Court in Parkville just before 5 o'clock tonight. That's where they found a man with multiple gunshot wounds. He's in serious condition. No word on any suspects. Anybody with any information on the shooting is asked to call Baltimore County Police or Metro Crime Stoppers. In Prince George's County, fashion choices are turning teens into targets, and now the community is stepping up to keep children out of danger. Brad Bell from our Sinclair sister station in Washington, D.C. has details.
It often happens suddenly, as it did in this caught-on-camera robbery in the district. People in that car pointing a gun at a college student on a bicycle, taking their high-end winter coat. Now it's happening to high school students in Prince George's County, like the 14-year-old shot in Hyattsville in January as he fought to keep his coat. Flowers high school students now being warned by their principal not to wear the trendy brands like Canada Goose and Moose Knuckle jackets and Balenciaga sneakers. Students we speak to angered by the crime trend.
Many of my peers have been targeted based off what they're wearing.
It's like
why you gotta take from somebody else just so you can have it? You feel me? It's like, if you want it, work to go get it.
It's gotten so bad that community associations near Flowers High are fighting back with their eyes and ears, organizing along with County Council Chair Jolene Ivey what they're calling the Community Power Hour.
Just did something to the gut of her stomach to hear that when our students are walking home from school, people are strong-arming them.
Ivey today handing out flyers along with Flowers principal Gorman Brown.
If you could just be outside, visible, keep your eyes out.
Hoping an alert community will protect the students.
People out there, they do not care about us, okay? They don't care about being civilized. They don't care about making their own money and buying things. They care about the easy, quick way of robbing people.
At busy dismissal time today, as students head home on buses, on foot, or in cars, student Sydney Hassan says the Community Watch will provide some comfort.
It makes it feel like there's a community watching out for us.
And while this effort is focusing on this high school community in this particular neighborhood, the organizers say there is no reason why this can't be picked up region-wide to keep many more children safe. In Springdale, Brad Bell, Fox 45 News.
I always made fun, there's two things certain, and that's taxes and death. Now they're going to get money out of my pocket when they put me in the ground.
Lawmakers are proposing a plan to offset the state's $3 billion transportation budget shortfall, and it could take a bite out of your wallet. Fox 45's Amy Simpson takes us through possible changes to the state's service tax.
In Annapolis today, more legislation up for debate that would directly impact your bank account.
We have one hearing today, House Bill 1515.
The proposal calling to lower Maryland's sales tax from 6% to 5%, but broaden the tax base to include dozens upon dozens of services, calling to tax things like haircuts and manicures, car repairs, pet grooming, house and gutter cleaning, tax return preparation, and funeral, burial, and cremation services, just to name a few.
I guess you could say I intended House Bill 1515 to be a bit of a conversation starter.
House Majority Leader David Moon of Montgomery County sponsoring the bill after similar legislation was raised back in 2020, pointing to Maryland's dire financial outlook and the need to find new ways to bring dollars in. According to Moon, lowering the sales tax on goods would mean losing about $1 billion in yearly state revenue, but adding a tax on services would bring in an estimated $4 billion each year.
So that's a net of $3 billion from what many economists would believe is a modernizing of the economy.
Testimony today on House Bill 1515, quite broad.
It is inconsistent from a policy perspective that we have decided to charge a sales tax on shampoo, but not spa treatments.
At times, questioning things like the potential impact of service taxes on homeowners and maintaining a home.
It's going to add thousands and thousands to the cost of buying and owning a home.
The impact on small businesses and what services should be specifically excluded from taxation. Nonprofit, health, religious, and childcare costs among the services already off the table. Today, the Maryland Republican Party calling this the everything tax, strongly opposing the bill, claiming it would be the largest single tax increase in the history of the state of Maryland.
There's no Senate crossfire of this. I've spoken to lots of people in the Senate. They have no interest in it. What is the value of doing this late in the game, this session?
Maryland Senate President Bill Ferguson questioned on this legislation Friday, indicating this will not move forward in the Senate.
It will not.
Raising the question how this conversation about sales tax, service tax, and Maryland's revenue streams will pick back up in years to come. Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
In addition to the service tax proposal, lawmakers are also pitching a 50-cent fee on any packages delivered to your home. A toll increase is also on the table for the first time in a decade. Tax